Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa Wheeler, Director of Curatorial Services here at the Booth Museum. I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you all to all the booth members who support our programs. If you're a not yet member, I encourage you to stop by the Circle Desk and join the booth family today. I invite everyone to stay and explore the galleries after today's program. The Borderlands Gallery on the lower level features our annual middle and high school art exhibition through this coming Sunday. In the Picturing America Gallery on the second floor, we have photographer Cody S. Brothers' American Film. This exhibition showcases the work of New Mexico photographer Cody Brothers, known for his innovative approach to film photography. There are 17 really large-scale photographs in the exhibition, and I really enjoy the subject matter in those. They some of them remind me of Route 66 and other great locations out west, and I think you'd love them too if you want to take the time to go up there. In our special exhibition gallery, we've got Western American art south of the Sweet Tea Line 7 through April 12th. If you've visited it a few times, you may want to go back and get another look at it before it gets ready to go. This exhibition takes place about every 3 years, and it features works of art from private collections across the South. And in this particular rendition, number 7, about half of the paintings and sculptures have been donated to the booth since Sweet Tea 6 took place, and the other half are on loan, again, from our wonderful members and collectors. And on April 11th, we're going to have the most unusual exhibition, I think, that we've ever had here. It's called Jeremy Lipking, 30 Years a Painter, from 1996 to 2026. And he considers this his mid-career retrospective. Jeremy was named by American Artist Magazine as one of the 75 greatest artists of all time. Of all time, right? Of all time. He has skyrocketed to the top of the art world in 30 years, short years. He's a realist figurative painter who lists John Singer Sargent, Anders Zorn, Joaquin Sorolla, and the Taos Society of Artists as major influences. His paintings celebrate simple everyday life. A lot of them his models are his wife and his children. The exhibition's different for us in that it features really intimate portraits, still lifes, and Western landscapes. And we are really honored to host this exhibition, and because this is a really rare opportunity to see 40 works from this master artist's career. So I hope y'all all come for that. It opens on the 11th for our members. On the 12th, the Portrait Society of America is busing a group up here, and he's doing a special lecture for them on Sunday afternoon at 2, but we're allowed to have members or guests or whoever wants to sign up come to that as well, and you can sign up on our website, but I think we're starting to get very low on tickets. And now moving on. The West in Focus, Indigenous People, is the name of today's program, and I want to offer a huge congratulations to Booth Curator of Photography, Mark Medley, who did an excellent job curating this exhibition. And we're also delighted to have Kevin Garrett join Mark. Kevin is an Atlanta-based photographer who donated the 2 prints of the Red Jingle Dancers and Indigenous leader Joe Marshall III, which are currently on exhibit in the exhibition. Both of those photos were taken on location at a reservation in South Dakota in 2023. A huge welcome for Mark and Kevin.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Lisa, very much for your kind introduction. I'm so excited today to talk about this exhibit, Indigenous People. This is the second installment of the West in Focus. The first was about women, and now we have this about Native Americans. And the Booth Photography Collection was established in 2017, and we've been collecting prints and images since that time, and we now, including the negatives, we have almost 1,000 pieces in that collection. So this exhibit today features prints that were taken from the collection, and we're going to dive right into it here with something that, let me find my clicker here. I went and tapped my iPad and nothing happened. Imagine that. All right. So there was a lady by the name of Zoë Urness who had a show here in 2017. She is an amazing photographer based in Seattle, and this is a portrait that she made in 2022 entitled Hopi Maiden. But one of the quotes that Ms. Urness has said, and she is very adamant about this, is it has to do with indigenous identity, and that is, we are here, and through our traditions, we are thriving. And that has to do with culture. It has to do with the preservation of culture. And her photography and some of the other contemporary photography that you're going to see today is all about that preservation of culture, that preservation of history. And we're going to touch on what is history. Speaking of history, I'm going to just dive right into the three categories that we have. Let's see if it'll work for me. There it goes. What we have in the exhibit is basically three sections. They're not linear, and they're all in the gallery together, but they're not linear when you go up there. That includes basically historic photographs of indigenous people, photography by indigenous photographers, contemporary photographs of indigenous people, and we're gonna work our way through these as we go. Now, I will say this, that one of the questions that is central to this exhibit, especially in this first section about historical photos, has got to do with context. And that is all about who's making the photo. We see here, and this photo is by a very famous Western photographer. We're going to talk more about him, William Henry Jackson. This is a portrait that he did. This is a later one, 1899, I believe it is. You see, though, that there's a cultural transition going on here. That some of them were wearing Western clothes, some were still wearing traditional indigenous clothes. You see, though, that the photographer is the person that's in control of the narrative. He's arranged them. He's made their photograph. They don't really have any say in what's going on. They're just there. And this is something that has been going on for, well, it's still considerable. So we got who's being shown, who had the power to shape the story. And this piece, actually, this print is it's in the niche on your way down to the Borderlands Gallery if you would like to see the original print. What we have here is another portrait by Jackson up in the top left-hand corner, and this was at actually an mining industrial exposition, one of those kind of World's Fair kinds of things that was held in Colorado. And these indigenous people are sort of like here as, you know, what's going on here? It makes you stop and question that. And one of the things about early indigenous photography is that there weren't any indigenous photographers. I mean, I've looked for them. I really couldn't find them, but I did find this lady right here. Her name is Jennie Ross Cobb, and she was a Cherokee who lived in Indian Territory at the turn of the 20th century. And somehow it was a trend at the time for young women to be given cameras, and her father gave her a camera. And she began making photographs and attended the women's seminary, which was located in what today would be Toluca, Oklahoma, and documented a lot of the things that were going on in her part of the world. Interestingly, she got married and moved to Texas, And then years later, she came back as a caretaker for the seminary and discovered her glass negatives still in the attic of one of the buildings on campus. And that's why we still have them. And if I could get my hands on a Jennie Ross Cobb print, woohoo, I'm telling you. So anyway, I digress, but she is an example of an indigenous photographer, definitely one of the first indigenous photographers and one of the first female indigenous photographer. So 3 categories in history, the historical section. We've got William Henry Jackson. We've really kind of looked at him already. Next to him, you may be familiar with him. He's probably the most famous historical indigenous photographer there is, Edward S. Curtis. And then next to him, we have a man by the name of William, more commonly known as Bill Groth. And he was a photographer and journalist in South Dakota in the mid-20th century. And we're going to look at all of these quickly. Here's Jackson again. And again, Jackson did a lot of work. He was involved in the exploration after the Civil War of the West. The U.S. Army decided that they were going to go out west and document all this stuff, explore stuff. There was still stuff in the West nobody really knew about. And Jackson went with them with his camera and made all of these photographs. He also worked for the Union Pacific Railroad. This image is not in the exhibit, but it was made for the Union Pacific Railroad, and it's a great example of what motivated Jackson, because he was a commercial photographer and worked for all these entities, the Army, the Union Pacific. Ultimately, he joined what was called the Detroit Photographic Company. When he became a partner at the turn of the 20th century, he brought with him 10,000 glass negatives. That's a lot. At any rate, you see here, though, that the title is Picturesque Views of Rocky Mountain Scenery. It doesn't mention the indigenous people there at all. They're just part of the scenery. They're just there. And that gets into the issue again about the context. The other thing, though, that makes Jackson, when I first started on this, I thought Jackson was like really a pioneer in indigenous photography, and he is, but he's not really the first. The photography really took off in the 1840s, and people went out west and made photographs. But as far as indigenous portraits are concerned, until Jackson, who was the first to really go out on location, they went to studios. And you have this 1862 portrait here was made by a studio called Charles D. Fredericks and Company. It was based in Washington, and you get the whole sort of like this exotic person has come to the controlled environment to get their portrait made. And then some people believe that the man there to the right of the indigenous gentleman is Frederickson himself. I haven't been able to dig that one completely out yet. Let's see what else we got. All right, so here's more Jackson. This is a print that is in the exhibit, and you can see that it's very similar to what he did for the Union Pacific. Again, it is, when you look at the details of it, these are people that are living in a tumultuous time of change. They'd never seen anything like this, and it's reflected in the mix of, some of them are wearing Western clothes, some are wearing traditional clothes, and then there are the traditional structures behind them here in the image. It is like the amount of change they were going through is hard for me to get my head around. Let's move on to Edward S. Curtis. Curtis had a project that he was impassioned to do. It was a 20-volume project, and it was entitled The North American Indian, and it was published in 20 volumes between 1907 and 1930. And these are some examples from the Booth collection right here. 3 of these, the 3 along the top, are actually on copper plates, because the primary medium that Curtis used is what's called photogravure, which is a very labor-intensive process of transferring the image over to a print from a copper plate. And the volumes of the North American Indian were all made from these plates. And the Booth was able to acquire these. We have more than these 3, and there's actually a different one that's upstairs currently. The one on the far left was in the flagship exhibit for this series, which was called Western Focus, which was about a year ago. 3 prints. Curtis gets criticized a lot for romanticizing as I put up here, sometimes overly romanticized narrative of Native cultural preservation. He believed, and Jackson did too, that indigenous people were disappearing. It was a whole disappearing culture. It was going to just go away, and we got to get pictures of it now. And that's what Curtis believed as well. But he tended to do things that were dramatic. He posed people. These are two portraits that are in the exhibit. I'm sure he posed them. And I'm going to say in Curtis's defense that Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans, they posed their stuff in the 30s for the Farm Security Administration. It's not a new concept. They've been criticized for it too. But Curtis, he did what he thought was right. And one of the things I think that always gets overlooked about Curtis that I thought about just this morning was that Curtis was a master craftsman. He made these he was on location shooting this stuff. And he went back and printed it into these amazing photogravure prints that you have and that the museum is lucky enough to have in its collection. Last, we have Bill Groth. In 1948, there was a reunion of surviving members, we won't say members, survivors of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, which took place in 1876. And Groth was, as I've mentioned, he was a journalist and photographer based in South Dakota. He's also famous for photographs he made of the building of Mount Rushmore, or the construction of Mount Rushmore. But he went out in 1948. He was the only journalist that went to do this. And ironically, they all met for the reunion at a state park in South Dakota called Custer State Park. How'd that feel, I wonder? So you got nine portraits and the group portrait that you see here. And here's three individuals that are, and all 10 portraits are in the exhibition currently. They are the centerpiece of the entire exhibition. But we have here we have John Sitting Bull, who was he was the son of Chief Sitting Bull, who was murdered in 1890, the original Sitting Bull. This is his son. He was a member of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in the 1880s and 1890s. And ultimately, even after this portrait, he went to Hollywood and appeared as himself, as an Indian in Westerns. In fact, I have the titles here. It's pretty amazing. 1951, Tomahawk. 1952, The Savage. And 1955, Chief Crazy Horse. This man had seen a lot. Next to him, Nicholas Black Elk. He was another survivor, wrote a book documenting indigenous, all of these men, they had this spiritual element to them, that they became spiritual leaders in their communities. And Black Elk wrote a book in the 30s about this, documenting these things. He also was called Black Elk Speaks. He was also in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And he's here, but this is my favorite part of the entire Bill Groth section. In 2016, the highest point in South Dakota was renamed. It was called Harney Peak, the highest place in South Dakota. It was renamed Black Elk Peak in honor of this man, and that is really fantastic, in my opinion. At the end, we have Dewey Beard, a man another very spiritual man. His entire family was lost at the massacre at Wounded Knee in 1890. He converted to Catholicism, and that's when he changed his name to Dewey Beard. These men have seen incredible things in their lives. Again, it's hard for me to get my head around it. Okay. We're moving on. The next section, photography by indigenous photographers. Zoë Urness, we've seen her quote, Zig Jackson, and Douglas Miles. I think it was really great, and it wasn't intentional. It just worked out this way, but they're all three from three distinct places in the U.S. Zoë Urness is based in the Pacific Southwest. She is part Alaskan Native, part Cherokee. Then you have Zig Jackson, who grew up on the reservation in South Dakota, and then that informs his art. His art is informed to the core by that experience. On the far right, we have Douglas Miles. Miles is an Apache who lives in Arizona. So we have these three distinct regions, and Miles he's just about militant about the power of art, and we're gonna look at that. We're gonna start with Ms. Urness. This is a print that was from her show at the booth in 2017 that the booth was able to acquire, and honestly, if we had the means, someday I would love to acquire another piece. We have two pieces by Ms. Urness, and I would love to get another one. And you see there a picture at the bottom. She also is famous for this photo, standing December 5th, 2016, Standing Rock. Was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, documenting the protest of the Standing Rock pipeline in 2016. Interestingly, she didn't go there as an artist. She had read about what was going on social media, and so she and some of her friends decided they were going to go as an expression of basically community support. And that's why she went. And they went, and this was one of the results was this photograph. Ms. Urness continues to make art. In 2022, she was granted a grant from Sony. It was called an Alpha Female grant because it was only for women photographers. And she did a series about indigenous motherhood because she, at the time, I think, was expecting. And she did all of these in 5 weeks, and they all are in her trademark sepia tone style that gets me every time right here, sepia tone. She also had access from Sony to cameras, including an underwater camera, which is how she made the image that you see of the woman floating beneath the water. Next we have Zig Jackson, and as it says up here, native identity, humor, and urban identity. I cannot pronounce that. Let's just move on. What it means, though, is this. It means that, and Jackson would tell you this, it means that indigenous people don't just live on the reservation. They don't just live out in the country. They're everywhere. They're here with you every day. They're just like, they're citizens, just like everybody else. And one of the things that was central to Jackson's art and his entire career, Jackson was an instructor at Savannah College of Art and Design for over 30 years. But he went every summer, he went to the West. He had a van, and he would go to the West and drive all over the West. He made friends all over the West. And a lot of these photos are results of that. One of the things he's really wanting to express is how weird is it to be an indigenous person in modern America? Because that's weird, folks. It doesn't happen every day. And he does things like, he got this photograph of this tourist right up on this man. They're just like what we saw with Jackson. It's like they're just part of the scenery. And then up at the top is something that I wish we could see it better. Is a lot of us will probably identify with this. I know I certainly do. And that is going to Cherokee, North Carolina, and having your photograph made with an Indian. I don't know how many people have done that. I did it when I was about 6 years old. I've been there and done that. Jackson, he wants to make you stop and think about that for a minute. All right. This is the piece that is currently in the exhibit, and Jackson is a man of first. He was the first indigenous person to study at the San Francisco Institute of Art, which is the famous program that was founded by Ansel Adams. He's also the first indigenous photographer to win a Guggenheim Award. He's also the first indigenous photographer to have his prints in the Smithsonian and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. I could go on and on. He has done a lot with his career. He liked, in this series, Indian Man in San Francisco, which was done in the early 90s, he juxtaposes himself against, what is it? You have this indigenous chief sitting on the bus with these people, and it goes back to that, how weird is it to be indigenous in modern America? He also did a series about commodities, and I didn't know this until I met Zig Jackson, and that is if you lived on the reservation, the federal government gave you food. They would give you canned goods, they would give you flour, they would give you all these things, and he did a series making fun of it. He put himself on the can, and it just says 100% Indian. The cans would say chicken or beef, and he also did a thing. He documented all of these signs, reservation signs, all over the U.S. And this was an early one that he did himself in San Francisco. And he's just really trying to call attention to what is a reservation, and is it real, or is it just something in your head? So that brings us to Douglas Miles. Douglas Miles is well, as an old punk rocker myself, I really identified with this. He founded what was called the Apache Skateboard Company in the early 2000s, and started working his ideas into these, I guess we'll call it popular culture. I don't know what else to call it right now. You see the young indigenous girl wearing the Ramones shirt. How weird is that? I don't think about that every day. But Miles's whole thing is about that we are indigenous. We're here, just like Zoë Urness says. We're here, and we're expressing ourselves, and we're making it known we're here by expressing ourselves. And we are reclaiming our culture through art, because if you think about it, I mean, we've looked at it already. You think about John Sitting Bull being in 3 Westerns, the context was taken over, and it needs to be reclaimed. That's what Douglas Miles would tell you. So he did all of these works this way. This is the piece on the far right that's currently in the exhibit, and we were lucky enough to acquire this from the Etherton Gallery in Tucson, who was the gentleman that also helped us with the Danny Lyon exhibit back last year. And it's entitled, "He's Gone." And it's an image of an Apache man on a suitcase. And it's from what Miles calls the Forced Removal Series. And the Forced Removal Series is all about this idea of Native Americans losing their land, the loss of indigenous land, and the expressions of that. And you can see he's made a lot of them. And in fact, you can go online, and they do at galleries, they do these installations where they stack up the suitcases, like whole stacks of them. And he also does, I wanted one of these so bad I couldn't get one. It was a gas can. Oh man, that was just too much. All right, so this is Miles. This is moving us on to contemporary photographs of indigenous people. And we're gonna dive right in here. Patrick Nagatani. Patrick Nagatani was a Japanese American who was born in Chicago just a few days after the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He also became a photographer, and he was involved in special effects in Hollywood. He worked on the models for Blade Runner and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was a very talented and skilled photographer and became an instructor at the University of New Mexico. He makes these composite images, and I'll show you the one we have in a moment, but I still don't understand how he does it. It's like a composite image is two negatives that have been put together, and you see that he's sort of like Zig Jackson. He's putting this native, this indigenous culture in this weird context, and for Nagatani, it was an expression of what's going on out there in the desert, and these lands were sacred. They belonged to native people, and as it says here, environmental critique on the destruction and violation of sacred indigenous lands in the Southwest. I will show you this one. This is the one that's in the exhibit that we have. And Seth told me one time, he said, I want you to get some composite photos. And we really were thinking about digital photos, but then I talked to, there was a man a friend of the museums who was a gallery owner in Arizona, and he introduced me to Nagatani, and this is a composite photo, just like we saw. Again, it makes that whole statement about the violation of sacred land, and of all things, what are you doing out there with it? And this is a really good fun fact too that I liked, is that Zig Jackson, he graduated from San Francisco Institute of Art, but he also studied photography at the University of New Mexico, and one of his instructors was Nagatani. And Nagatani was known, they were nationally known for their emphasis on conceptual themes, that is, the ideas behind the images as much as the crafts that you're doing to make the photo. And you can see it, that it's just like Indian Man in San Francisco, the juxtaposition of it, same thing. Next to him, Shane Balkowitz, I salute you, sir. You end up in every exhibit for some reason or another. And it's got to do with his, well, you could start with this, you start with the 19th century process of ambrotype, which he uses to make these portraits of indigenous people, and he's been doing it for about 10 years. They wanted to do 1,000, and I think they're way beyond that now. And it was all volunteer. It was all by consent, and people, there's no Edward Curtis going on here. People came and said, this is what I want to wear. And I could talk about all that, but today, and he was inspired by the portrait of Sitting Bull, 1881, that you see on the far left here. I could go on about that, but today I'm going to just talk about this. This is something Balkowitz is really big on too. I'd really love to do an exhibition. We've talked about it, but history. History is now. It is living. It's not something in the past. It's going on right now. And so Balkowitz wants to show that contemporary people are significant now. You have this gentleman right here. He has native features, but he is very contemporary. Uses an archival process to preserve the present for the future, and challenges the idea that history is only something already finished. And the whole point is that with an ambrotype, it's made to glass, so that it lasts 1,000 years. This is what Balkowitz said. The glass plates are made of silver and glass. Silver doesn't degrade, and they will be here 1,000 years from now, and I believe that. He also gives us a little extra, just a little kick here. Your images on your phone have no chance of being here 50 years from now. I don't know if that's true, but I will tell you this, all the stuff that I experimented with in the 90s is all on DVD and CD, and that stuff ain't gonna last forever. It's just not. Oh, and that brings us to Kevin Garrett. Kevin Garrett is an Atlanta-based photographer. He's a professional photographer. He's done work all over Atlanta for various commercial projects. He has worked for the Resistol Company, the Western Clothiers in Texas. He's worked for the U.S. Department of Defense. And one of my favorites is an image that he got while riding the hood of a convertible that was borrowed from Savoy in a shoot he was doing for the North Georgia Tourism Association. I believe I got that right. Anyway, in 2023, he met a man by the name of Joe Marshall, and they began a friendship, and Kevin went to South Dakota to make these portraits, starting one. We're going to start here. This is in the exhibit, is of the Red Jingle Dancers. These two ladies, they're a mother and daughter, and they have this regalia they are wearing and doing this dance so that they can call attention to, because there was a terrible problem. Kevin and I were upstairs looking at the exhibit just a little while ago, and there was a man, overheard us talking, and he was like, it is a terrible problem that indigenous women disappear every year. Lots of them. And they're trying to call attention to this. And Kevin was gracious enough to donate these prints to the museum, and I really appreciate that, and am grateful. Joe Marshall is, the best word I could come up with for Joe Marshall was that he was an indigenous visionary. The man's he authored over 21 books. He was involved in the creation of one of the first indigenous colleges in South Dakota. His resume is it goes on and on. He was given an honorary PhD just before he passed away in 2025. And as it says here, Marshall is remembered for his impactful role in Lakota education and government and for his resolute advocacy for the preservation of indigenous culture. And that takes us all the way back to what Zoë Urness said at the very beginning. But without further ado, what I want to do right now is I want to welcome, because we're lucky enough to have him here today, Mr. Kevin Garrett up to the stage. He's going to tell us some more about his work and about some other images that are from this shoot. And this is the clicker. And, all right, man.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am delighted to be here with you today. I'm so excited to have this chance to share a few stories with you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the Booth Museum having me here. And I'm just honored and thrilled and humbled beyond words that I've got a couple of pieces that were considered somewhat worthy and could be here. I start with this. My camera gives me a license to look. I was an introverted child. You know, you wouldn't know it to see me or hear me yakking up here now, but I was an introverted child, and I like to look at things, and the camera gives me a license to look deeply, to see things that are in a deeper way, to ask questions and to be curious. My camera is a key to unlock doors and hearts and minds and even countries to people's stories. I've met some cool people. You know, I photographed authors, and I photographed titans of industry. I photographed a woman who won an Academy Award, best-selling author, and people like that. But it started as my hobby. I didn't go to school to study photography. I was first out of school, and I became a magazine writer. But I was curious enough that I was wondering who had the photographs that went along with my stories. So I was writing for Condé Nast and Brides Magazine, Coastal Living, Caribbean Travel and Life, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper with that. So I bought a camera. I thought, how hard could it be? Well, it's really hard, and I got a lot of stuff sent back to me and said, please stop sending us things. These aren't very good. But I wanted to do this so bad. I wanted to play so bad that I worked and I dug in, and I thought, I'm just never going to stop. And so I haven't. Eventually, it became my job, like full-time job, when we moved to Atlanta and back down from New York. One thing that I always told my sons, I believe that every day is an opportunity for a photo safari. You know, we can always go, well, if I had a bigger camera, I'd shoot better. Or if I got to go the places you got to go, I could shoot. And the truth is, you can have a full adventure in your backyard or your front yard. You can photograph your neighbors. For instance, during the pandemic, I got shut down, man, and I was stir crazy during that time. I packed my lights up. I had an old stand from Hollywood that had wheels on the bottom of it, and I put my strobe on it. And I went around my neighborhood during the pandemic, and I knocked on the door, backed up to the street, and I go, hey, anybody that's in that house right now, I'd love for you to come out, stand in the driveway, let me make your portrait, and I will give it to you. I was just looking for something to do. And I went around my whole neighborhood and shot everybody like that. So that was my local photo safari. Eventually, I would drop back to this, though. A camera gives you an opportunity to pivot and reinvent yourself, you know, because if you're going to do this a long time, you're going to go through iterations of equipment. We went from film and medium format to 35 millimeter to digital, and then many different layers of that. So constantly having to learn new equipment if you get old enough doing this like I have. And 9/11 came, and I'm a travel photographer and journalist, and I got shut down. And I got 2 little kids at home and a wife that wasn't working at the time. And I went and got a haircut, and I shaved a beard, and I bought a button-down shirt, and I went to see a corporate design firm. And they thought that I was coming in for an interview, but I was going job begging. And I just told those guys, I need you to look me in the eyes and believe that I can deliver what you need. And I went on a 10-year run after that, shooting annual reports and corporate photography. The rest of it eventually came back. And the next pivot after that, after jumping back into the tourism, was a pivot that led me to the Booth Museum, and that was the pandemic of the coronavirus that hit us all. I'm shut down again, and, just kind of twitching around the house. And I called a buddy out in Texas, and he started telling me about somebody interesting he met. He goes, this guy's an author, and, I know you've been shooting rodeos, and, you might be interested to talk to him. And I go, give me his phone number now. And that was Joseph Marshall III. And I called Joe Marshall, and I go, hey, I want to come and see you out at the reservation. And he said, you cannot come here. And I go, well, I can drive. And he goes, no, you can't come here because I'm in New Mexico at the time. I'm visiting my son, and it's a red state. You can't get here. And I go, well, let's just say that I could get across the border and I got into the state. Would you meet with me? And he goes, well, we're not going to get real close. But anyway, we ended up meeting at a Whataburger in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was the only place open. It's the only place we could get any food. And we sat for hours around the table, and I found out that I thought he was just a guy who wrote a book who might have an interesting story, and I had no idea what he was and who he had in his pocket. I got to refer to these notes with this because Joseph M. Marshall III was an elder with the Lakota tribe. He was a leader on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. He had 2 PhDs. He was a teacher. He was a writer. He was an author of 21 books. He was a technical advisor and cultural consultant on more than 50 movies, TV shows, and documentaries. He did his own voiceover for his books, on the audio books that he had written. He acted in Lonesome Dove and Into the West, and in 2008, he won the PEN Beyond Margins Award for The Day the World Ended at Little Bighorn. From an awkward, stilted phone call and a hamburger at Whataburger, he just became so important to me so fast, and we stayed in touch after that, and I just said, listen, I would like to come and photograph you out at the reservation, out at the Rosebud Reservation. And he said, okay, you can come, but you can't stay here and you can't come on the reservation without me. And as Mark mentioned, it's dangerous for the women, but it's just a dangerous place to be. It's got an 80% unemployment rate. They're dire poverty. They've got a drug problem. They've got a vast landscape of 900,000 acres. There's no lights. You're 3 hours from a grocery store. You're a million miles from a cop. So if anything happens, so he said, you stay in Nebraska and I'll meet you at the border of the state and we'll drive across together. So for 2 days, that last visit, I followed him around in a trail of dust, as he drove down the roads. But so this first portrait of Joe, he is holding a traditional bow and arrow and a quiver, and he was taught by his maternal grandfather how to make these crafts. He was one of the last people, and he was the last one that I knew of that I met there at the reservation who was able to teach these based on personal experience. This was handed down. The bow and the arrows are made of green ash. The quiver he stitched, and the beading, he hand beaded that himself. The photograph, my shots generally are kind of, I look at it like it's a collaboration between me and you, or me and the subject that I'm photographing. And they're kind of known for having some energy or some intent there. And a lot of them can be happy because I'm smiling and I'm talking and I'm chattering and the sound's not recorded. On this one, I was telling him, I said, you've got a lot of grievances and you've got a lot of history, and I'd really like to see it on your face, and I need you thinking about that. And he was standing there holding the bow down, but I need you to pull that bow up and pull that arrow back, and I need you to point the arrow straight at the camera because I want to shoot it with, and if anybody's a photographer, I'm shooting with a 35 millimeter lens, which means that I'm pretty close in order to get that kind of perspective. And what I wanted him to do was pull it back and point it at me, but he refused that because he was 78 years old and he had heart trouble. And he was like, no, I'm not gonna do that for you, but thanks for asking. But anyway, that's as close as I could get him to turn it. And when I finished taking the photograph, he goes, all right, now I'm gonna show you something. He goes, you hold the bow and arrow and you hold it back. And I pulled it back. I got it back, but at that point it slipped out of my hand and I lost his arrow. It went like over the horizon. So we realized like how close that came. And he told me, he goes, I've used this to kill many deer. And he goes, I wasn't going to point it at you. But thanks for asking. Oh, wait, I'll come back to that. There they are. Sorry. Anyway, we made that photograph, and on the next day I said, so what are we shooting? And he goes, just get in your car and follow me, we'll go. So we went out to this field, and the van pulls in, and these two ladies get out, and then they start unfolding their costumes, and they arrived with these beautiful dresses and beaded moccasins. And I soon found out why the name of the jingle dress was, because Regina and Lesline had stitched and sewn their own dresses. They had hand beaded these patterns on their moccasins themselves, and these are their ceremonial dresses. And I heard the story of the little cones that were on the dress, that they were formed originally from tobacco tin. They would clip it, tin it, and roll it, and then sew it on the dress. And that these were meant to echo the sound of rain, so when they were dancing, it was this way. And there was something that the last time we were here, Mark had pointed out and asked, he said, the dancers appear to both be airborne. And I said, they actually are. And then since that time, I've gone back to study about the dance. And the dance was originated in about 1918. It was in response to the yellow fever pandemic of that time. And again, it kind of ties in 9/11, our pandemic, and then this dance was formed during this time. There was a medicine man whose daughter was sick. They told him she was going to die, and he had a dream that she got dressed like this and did a dance. She did it and got well because of the dance or because she just got well, I don't know, but there were millions of people that died. But anyway, the original version of the dresses they had 365 cones on the dresses. There was one that represented each day of the year, and it was a prayer for each day. And the dance was more grounded, and they would dance in a zigzag pattern, much like the way our lives go, right? You think you're going to do this, and then you end up over here. I thought I was going to work for AT&T, and now 40 years later, I'm a photographer. You just never know. And later, though, the dance, after it was outlawed by the tribal police or the Bureau of Indian, they kept it alive through tradition and just teaching it at night and in their homes and everything. And it became more powerful and more agitated and more energetic. And so this dance, the next time it really appeared in public was at Standing Rock at the pipeline presentation. They were loading up to shoot tear gas at the tribes and the protesters. They were loading up to shoot rubber bullets at them. And the dancers, these courageous women, walked up to the front and they began the dance. That was misinterpreted by those on the other side. It was just a quiet moment of healing for the water, healing for the land, healing for the people. And they calmed the situation down. And anyway, so Joe felt like it was important that we photograph that. And then this became one of the photographs out of this series became the cover of his book, Sing for the Red Dress. Which, by the way, is available in the gift shop on your way out. 3 of his books are. One was Last Prisoner of Little Bighorn and The Wolf and the Crow. I didn't shoot the cover on The Wolf and the Crow, but those are my photographs on the others. I shot those and gave those to Joe, too. I really have taken a Robin Hood approach to a lot of things in my career. I've shot for Children of Conservation and Riverkeeper and places like that, and I give those away, but then I'll shoot for somebody else that has the ability and means to pay, and they're going to use it to help them make more money than they should pay. And that's kind of been my guide to do what I do. This dance, and I would just say this, starting in the 1970s and 80s, they started to drill for more and more oil around the reservation. And that coincided with the time that the young girls and the women started to become missing, and they were discovered murdered over time. And a lot of it is you've just got a blurring of jurisdictions out there. You've got the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you've got tribal police, you've got the local sheriff, you've got this and that. And, usually when you've got that many people stirring, you're just not motivated to cover that land and to get to the end of it, sadly. But I would say Joe would have wanted us to see these pictures and to do this. These were harrowing circumstances. And what I'd leave you with is that these people, even under the conditions that they live under today, they have hopes and dreams just like we have for ourselves, like we have for our children and grandchildren. Joe founded, in his last years, while he was still undergoing dialysis, he founded the Lakota Youth Foundation, the Lakota Youth Development Program out there, where they were teaching them how to make the arrows, how to set up a teepee, how to grow the plants that they grew in those times. And I'll show you something else too. That's just an outtake from our shoot. And there's Joe in front of a teepee that he helped set up for the Lakota youth. And they were getting ready to have the program, and we were going to go back and do a photo class for them and raise up some indigenous photographers. So there's still a possibility that that's going to happen. But Joe passed away in April 2025. He was a remarkable man. I was blessed to know him, and I'm honored to be here with you guys today. And thank you for sticking around to hear this. And thank you, Mark, and thank you to the Booth Museum for this time.
All right, we're really out of time, but there we go.
I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is another. In fact, Kevin told me that Joe never smiles, but somehow he got a smile out of him on this one. We're out of time. Again, we are here, and through our traditions, we are thriving. That really is. It really encapsulated it for me. And I want to thank Kevin for coming out of taking time from his busy schedule. And I'm gonna leave you with this. This was one that really gets me. And it's from Douglas Miles. And it is, when you realize the land is forever, you realize that you are forever and we are forever. And I truly believe it. All right. If anybody has, we'll take just one question. Anybody have questions? 'Cause we are out of time. Yes.
Has anybody done DNA testing to see if they have indigenous blood?
My brother just did his, and we always knew we were part Cherokee, but the question was how much. And
My husband did. He's a descendant of Pocahontas.
okay. Wow, that's very impressive.
It's big.
No. Any other questions? Yes.
You showed the one picture where a tourist is taking a picture of a Native American, and it looks odd to us, but on the other hand, that photograph may have been very powerful of that man's face.
Well, it is true, and I think what Zig Jackson was saying there is, in fact, I didn't give the title. The title is Indian Photographing Photographer Photographing Indian, and he's sort of making a joke out of the whole process of it. And I see your point, and that is a very valid point. So thank you for that. All right, I think we are out of time. I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and thank you for the support of the museum. And have a great afternoon. Thank you.